Baijiu Billabong, OG2 duo, me and Reezy, Tamo and Reezy. Yeah, just acknowledge, the original custodians of the land, the indigenous people of Australia, and we don't use the A word. But yeah, it's been a while. We've kind of had a hiatus because there's a lot of issues with scheduling, internet problems, and it's just it's been quite. But there's so much has happened, especially with our mates at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, or as we know them, the weapons lobbyists.
Yeah. So we've been wanting to do to talk about ASPI for a while, but I kind of wanted to devote a whole episode to them and do some research. But I haven't really done any research for this episode. So,
I mean, they try to cancel Professor Pan. He's really pretty much like Peter Pan. He's just such a happy-go-lucky dude. I don't know why anyone would attack him. He doesn't seem to bear any ill harm. He's just saying what he sees. Everything he posts in, he has his own evidence. He all uses evidence of ASPI and tries to make a logical assumption based off just common sense in general.
Yeah, that was a massive overreach. You put it well. Has the perfect online persona, and then it was one thing for people to sort of argue with him, but then Rusa tagged Deakin University this guy
Drew Pablo as well.
Yeah.
They all try to get him fired. I mean, this dude is an actual academic. He's a professor in international relations, and he's also now in the Australia China Research Centre. He probably, from what I've seen of his arguments, he's basically just did some simple Google searches and disproved a few camps, because they turned up to be just actual high schools or bomb shelters and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
As usual,
I was just gonna say, he is obviously, he's a fucking professor, so he's a smart dude, and a bunch of people in their early 20s who thought that they'd had just enough that they could own him, that they could shut down. It's one thing for those people for Drew and Rusa to come at other random people on Twitter, but Pan he's next level, and that was a massive failure.
Yeah, they got a lot of backlash. A lot of anti-China people, even then, were saying this is just cancel culture, gone mad. Especially these people are free speech warriors. They always go the people in Hong Kong are being silenced and all that crap. And now they're kind of cancel people. And furthermore, you talk about the 20-year-old thing. That's another kind of odd perspective, because if you look at the salaries for an analyst down in Australian Strategic Policy Institute, it's around $100,000, $120,000, and that's around the ER1 rate in the public service. And that's usually a rate that someone at least at the age of 30 to 40 will be getting, and they're in their early 20s. And look, allegedly, that does sound kind of shady. And I know it's meant to be hiring of skills, because there's very strict codes of conduct, very sort of strict criteria when hiring people for public service jobs. Maybe it's a bit different for ASPI because they're a think tank funded externally by foreign governments and also weapons manufacturers. But there's also one other point, is that allegedly someone told me that Josky was hired before he graduated, allegedly, of course. And that's a huge breach, because most of the jobs I see, they require a bachelor's at the minimum. So
right.
What's going on here, mate? Yeah.
So I just Googled ASPI, and it says that it's a think tank, but the founder was the Australian government. But they must have, at some stage it's founded in 2001, so some stage in the last 20 years, they have changed the official, ownership or function or whatever, so that surely they have disconnected themselves from the government so they can get away with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, from what I heard, I talked to a few people that's in sort of the public service unions, and they were like, well, they sort of part of the government, but sort of not. It's like Australia Post. It's a sort of public-private situation. I'm not sure myself, but still, that's something to look out for. Yeah, it's dodgy sounding.
Yeah, well, if we had some decent journalist on the China beat in Australia. That should be something they should be looking at, really. Instead of looking for Reds under the bed, look for tanks under the bed in this case.
I mean, like 20% of the funding comes from foreign governments. Japan, Taiwan, America, all very much governments hostile to China in that region. So it's not just the 2% that's coming in from like Raytheon and Boeing, which is dodgy as that. This is dodgy as well. Like why do we have a think tank that we're funding and also foreign governments are funding? Where do the interests really lie about ASPI? That's a question we need to ask, and that scares me because they have so much influence at the moment. I also heard that ASPI got a lot of funding from Twitter to help them monitor fake news, which is interesting.
Well, some of our Twitter mutuals got taken down in that purge a couple of months ago, which was done by Twitter, but it was with data from ASPI. So that was weird, yeah. And we've just had another purge, a lot of so-called Iranian accounts seem to have disappeared.
The Nepalese account, very high profile one. Socialist Life, I think. What's her name? Sabina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she got taken down, and they said her name was offensive, but her name was literally Sabina. So.
She's still up.
Oh no, she got back after the suspension.
Oh, she's back, is she?
She got banned for her offensive name, which is her actual real life name. I don't know how that worked. They're just banning people because they're finding some bullshit reason. They just ticket and Shifan, who got basically ganged up on by Adrian Zenz.
What?
Didn't you see? So we recorded an episode with Shifan and a few other Chinese Australians about the current xenophobia. And next day, we wake up and all her 3 accounts of around 10k followers were banned. I messaged her and she's like, just show me a few messages of Zen's apparently having brigaded her and kept retweeting her to get her. Or he didn't actually say, come at her, but he basically made the sort of, assumption for his followers that she was like a genocide denier, which she isn't. And, of course, all his followers reported her and got her banned. All 3 accounts.
So he seems to be a bit more active on Twitter lately.
He's now focused on Tibet as well. So he likes Buddhism.
I'm just seeing these tweets here from him. He's retweeted her quote tweeted her 3 times.
Randomly, yeah. And this is really, Carl went into it because Carl, me and Carl both know Shifan grew up in Xinjiang as a kid, in Kashgar, the most Uyghur heavy place in terms of population by ratio, the highest amount of Uyghurs, which is Kashgar. And it's very funny because I don't think Zenz has ever been to Xinjiang or perhaps even China. So,
no.
I guess it's none of us are arguing that there is no oppression. We're just arguing there is no genocide, and we don't think that what's happening should be happening either. But people just twist.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening to Professor Pan. They're saying he's apparently a genocide pusher. It's not true. He's just saying you can't just label every hotel, every school, every whatever government institution as a internment camp, which is not what it is.
Yeah, and as we've discussed before, like they take it too far with these ridiculous claims. They can't just they can't settle for like a colonial project similar to Australia's or even less, perhaps, I'm not sure. They straight out with these camps with what are we up? We're up to like 3 million people now.
No, it was like 6 million. What's his name?
6 million,
the Aussie guy that used former bigot but turned activist for. I can't remember his name anymore. You know what I'm talking about, yeah?
There's about 20 people that fit that description.
Yeah, one of those guys. He's like, I used to be really hating Muslims, but ever since I saw the money in Patreon, I turned around. Yeah, it's like, it's probably not as bad as Australia, because Australia literally has indefinite detention. They don't allow you to go home at night. They don't give you a free degree. The bad thing is you're forced to have this education no matter what, which is really bad because you don't have a choice. You have to go to school. That's the problem with me. Like I mean, why do I have to do this education even if I'm not associated with terrorism just because of my ethnic background, which is annoying. That's kind of discriminatory in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really it's not fucking my place to tell Chinese people how to do it, but the racial profiling at a minimum would be extremely inconveniencing for certain
It
people.
is very much like I was speaking to a Kazakh friend, and she's like, it's very hard for her to go to Thailand now because of her Muslim and Kazakh background.
Right.
She has to get extra checks just because she's Kazakh, and she's never like wanted. She's not even very religious, and she's not political at all. It's just her background. So that's really unfair. That's not cool, man.
Yeah.
But it's not like in Australia where if you're a refugee or you're gonna get put in the camp and you're never gonna chance to get out. You're just stuck there for like next 20 years until you're like, all right, just put me back in my country and kill me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if we've mentioned this podcast before, but maybe 2 or 3 kilometers away from me is a place called Kangaroo Point. It's like an inner city suburb of Brisbane. And there's a hotel that's been, since coronavirus kicked off, has been converted into a makeshift prison. And there's about, I don't know, 30 or 40 refugees in there. There's one guy there who fled to Australia when he was 14, and he's still there. He's 21 years old. He's been in prisons in Australia for 7 years.
That's just
so
shocking.
That's why someone like me, as a born and bred Aussie, I can talk about things and discuss them out of interest, I guess, but I certainly cannot be lecturing anyone.
Wasn't there like some rate where incarceration rates for Indigenous people is actually higher than African Americans, comparatively?
Oh yeah,
it's disgusting. It's
yeah. Well, we
like,
have our
yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
I see it in the streets. Like I'm in Melbourne in the CBD, and there's an Indigenous kid. Literally, the police goes up to him and just starts searching him for no reason. He just ignores me or any other white bloke or any Asian bloke walking past. But they go for that Indigenous kid right away, pinpoint. 3 or 4 of them shake down this 15-year-old kid. And he's probably just some student, or maybe a uni kid sometimes. It's bloody unfair. That's...
I mean, there's... you'll see like Indigenous kids in school uniforms, 10, 12 years old on the train. And some of the trains in Brisbane have security now. And those security guards will just sit right in front of those kids, just staring at them.
Yeah, it's bloody scary. Like I would not want to live like that. And it must just be hurt a lot, because especially that you're the original people of this land, and these bastards come over and they're doing this to you. That's just shocking.
So, I guess the issue is like that. How do we separate that sort of from whataboutism? Or does it even matter? Like, I don't.
I mean, you can't. It's not really whataboutism at this point. It's kind of just pointing out the fallacies or the hypocrisy of these countries calling out yellow people. When you got people doing vasectomies down in the ICE camps, literally making it so refugee women in America can't have babies. That's actually fucked up. That's disgusting. I am totally against the fact that they're forcing people to get degrees in China. That's shocking, like everyone. But that sounds way less, evil than, cutting your genitalia, like whatever the hell they're doing in America.
Yeah. No, that's actually a good way of putting it. I mean, yeah, it would be extremely difficult for any country to compete with what America gets up to.
Yeah, and then especially when you got ASPI funded by actual military, weapons industry dealers, making money right now off Yemen, Raytheon.
Yeah, actually, so that's something I wanted to talk about, kind of about the funding of ASPI as well. As I was listening to Around the Empire podcast, which is a great podcast. A couple of weeks ago, Isa Bloomy was on the show. He's like a Middle Eastern Yemen sort of scholar, but he was talking a lot about all the think tanks in America. They're all a lot of them have like large funding from certain Gulf sort of Emirates. So like say Brookings Institute will get a lot of funding from either UAE or Qatar, and then another think tank will get funding from another Gulf state. Another one's getting it from Saudi Arabia.
Oh,
So
so
you can kind of get each of those think tanks is so because there's filthy amounts of money coming from these oil.
It's kind of like
oil
Trump
monarchies.
with his kids. They're all consulting for each other and making money off each other.
Well,
Just this
yeah,
roundabout
I mean,
of money.
they're tied up with that.
Yeah, and they don't
So
even pay taxes. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah.
and yeah, so if ASPI is getting money from these other countries, well, where does you just have to put that in perspective, and I'm still happy to read ASPI or any think tank's reports.
But when you're getting disproven by randoms just doing a blind Google search on the internet, that's pretty sad, man.
That is sad. That's yeah.
There's
But to
that Ocean
have
Bogan guy. He had like 5 tweets, and he literally just went on Baidu, which is the Google in China, and searched that address he put down. It's like, hey, this is just a high school, and that's why there's like, that's what it says there, and it's just hilarious. Then Nathan Roos is like, no, because they ran out of space. I'm like, dude, Xinjiang is the largest land area in bloody China. And then the other fact is, China can build a new building in a week. Like, they build hospitals in 1 week. For them to build a interment center, it must take 2 hours. They would love to make that economic incentive to build millions of centers if they needed to. But
yeah.
It's just stupid. They would never take another school to give education to the other people. That just doesn't make sense. In Chinese culture, you've got to be Orientals because education is very important in Asia.
Yeah. So I just with that, it's so I just wonder how I'm starting to think more these days about the economic aspects of all these Uyghur and other minority groups, and as Andrew Zenz has said lately, all these Tibetans moving into blue collar jobs. So I'm guessing they were living in like subsistence farming of some
Nomadic,
sort.
yeah.
Or even nomadic, yeah, like not, and not being integrated into the Chinese, let alone the global economy. And now they're able to do that.
They just want to be able some Karens go over to Tibet and take photos like, oh, look at these Tibetans, they have such culture, living in, such squalor. That's what they want, They don't really care about them. They just want them as for the spectacle of like, oh,
it's going to Tibet and getting a photo with a bunch of Tibetan kids in nice modern clothes does not look as good on Instagram as with
yak
kids
farmers
with filthy clothes because they don't have fucking running water in their house
and they drink yak milk all day.
Yeah. So I wonder especially with Zenz's last report is that he's had all this data that's showing increased conditions for Tibetans, better work, much more money, integration, access to internet.
Cultural genocide. This is horrible. How could they do that?
Okay, well, yeah, but what he's done is he's gone, okay, I've got these facts. What can I selectively take from this and offer to
the think tanks?
Whatever. Yeah, the think tanks. And then, but ultimately the think tank, what it comes down to, it's a one paragraph in a News Corp in Australia newspaper, or it's a 30-second grab, or it's just a dumb tweet that no one looks any further into. So part of this big picture of the improvements of life for rural Chinese people, you just take out the little part about them getting jobs without the perspective around it. It's very easy to believe.
I mean, you put another point, just say 50 years ago, 95% of Chinese people were farming, subsistence farmers, agrarian farmers. If you told anyone Chinese, even back then, you're like, oh, we can give you a new life as say a tradie or an office job or a party member. Everyone, nearly all of them would say yes. It's just like the same with the Tibetans now. They don't want to be subsistence farmers or like in in northern China they'll have sheep herders. In the south they'll have like pig farmers. It's not a life they actually want. They're just doing it because it's what the environment allows them to do. Yeah.
Look, it is it is sad to see traditional cultures get sucked up by global culture. It's not unique to China. I'm sure there was cozy villages in rural England 150 years ago that have lost that charm. There's villages in Thailand or Africa that are now completely integrated into a global culture, and that's been lost. That sucks. But what doesn't suck is escaping poverty. And I was watching a YouTube lecture, and I can't remember his name. It was an American scholar, and he'd gone to a village in Yunnan, extremely isolated village in Yunnan. He spent 2 years there studying the effects of the poverty eradication project. And he was talking to a villager, and he said to the villager, "Man, this village is absolutely beautiful. These mountains, the clouds, it's so green. Do you ever just step back and just think, I'm so lucky, this is beautiful?"
He's like, fuck off.
Yeah, the villager said to me, "These mountains are the reason I'm poor."
Yeah, because they don't have flat land to farm and make more money or grow better crops.
Well, he doesn't have a road to get his crops into town before they go off.
Yeah, that's why all the rich places in China, like in sort of the east central area, or the south central east, because you got better flat land, very rich land, better land. That's why the southwest, this has lots of hill tribes, and it's always been quite poorer comparatively to the rest of China, and they don't understand it.
Yeah.
They want to keep like honest, Thailand. Yeah.
That was a bit of a wake up call for me as well. To be honest, I really still have like a very basic understanding of China, but it's so massive, and that there's just so many people that are so isolated that they're desperate to, I imagine, to get connected, and that's why when they're 18 or younger, they go and do their 4 years or 5 years in a factory in Shenzhen or Guangzhou or something, don't they?
It's the same with Han Chinese kids from Sichuan or from the western provinces. You see them working all the poorest jobs in the big cities. They're there on their own avail. They're not like being forced to come to, say, Beijing or Shanghai to work as waiters. It's just they can earn 10 times as much as being a waiter than working on a farm back home.
Exactly.
In this way, they can buy it. Like, it's crazy. Like, I know a lot of people. They're now 35. Because they worked for 10 years down in a big city, they actually bought a house or two back in their hometowns because of how cheap it is.
How is that any different to, for example, my parents who moved to Australia from New Zealand with nothing and just working unskilled labor in the hope that me and my sisters would get better jobs and stuff, or any immigrant, a Chinese person in Guangzhou moving to Australia in the 70s and running the only Chinese takeaway store in some horrible town in Queensland,
Yeah. And keep pissing off Pauline Hanson so much that she goes on a tirade for the rest of her life. But yeah, did you have a look at that? It seems like they want to keep every Chinese person, not Chinese, but every minority sort of impoverished and poor, so they eventually will revolt. Like there was that Skechers, Fred. So there's that Dr. Laura Murphy who I think saw a Uyghur employee in the Skechers factory in China.
Okay, so I that was me who found her thread.
Oh.
She had retweeted that American scholar who got that video, which does look like it's from what's a Chinese TikTok called?
Douyin, which is just TikTok, yeah. Douyin.
Douyin, yeah. So I don't know, because I asked him, I said, "Where did you get this video from?" And someone replied to me saying, "Oh, it's just from Douyin." And I was like, "Oh, well, are you sure this guy's like a respected scholar? I don't think he would be doing that." But then if you look carefully at the video, he's tried to crop out that little D symbol, but the top corner of it's sitting there. And I guess my naivety should have given away, but the music in the background as well is classic TikTok material.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
So this Laura Chicks picked it up and she created that massive story out of it.
30 thread out of one 14-second video. The guy might not even Uyghur. He could be Tajik. He could be any. I don't know. He could even be Indian. We don't even know.
And you saw that tweet of hers where she's like, he might not even know that he's in forced labor.
He's probably getting a pretty good wage compared to what he could probably get back in wherever he's from. It looks actually pretty cute because he's a pretty nice moustache, dude, man. He probably slays. He seems pretty happy. Like he gave the heart symbol as well. He doesn't look like he's being forced, like he's being whipped or.
Well, I'm gonna push back on that because I don't think that a 15-second video can tell you anything about anything.
But that's what I got. But she kind of went the other way around and started saying, "Oh man, this is horrible. How could this guy have a job? He needs to go back to his, I don't know, grape farm, whatever they. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sultana's farm. That's right. That's what they have. A lot of sultanas. Yeah. Get back to farming sheep, you damn Uyghur. She's just really angry. Yeah, as I said, they want to keep them in poverty and make them really poor and make China look bad, I guess. It's just very weird.
I mean, I wanted to add like the last 20, 30 years and probably the next 20 years of China, there has been a massive sacrifice of just your average Chinese worker who's probably working far harder than anyone in Australia does, and someone working in a Uyghur working in a factory making shoes, maybe it does seem like a shitty job to anyone here in the West.
Looks better than backpacking, picking berries off the trees, mate.
Well, it's better than farm work in Australia.
You're not breaking your back under like a 40-degree sun and getting $2 an hour. Actually, probably getting more than that.
But that's how the development of an economy or in a country works. You go through that period, and it's certainly, I mean, at least they're getting infrastructure, the minimum out of it. Unlike, some of those shoe factories in places like Indonesia or sort of Southeast Asia, certainly not as good conditions as what they're seeing in China. And it just needs to be put into perspective a bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them just sort of draw out like these huge tangents. The funniest one is when Nathan Ruza posted a QR code of like a watermelon seller.
Oh my god!
And it's like, this is how to report terrorism. Like you could say, which terrorist is gonna be like, hey, this is my QR code for my terrorist profile? What the fuck?
What? So
that
screenshot was CGTN. So he would just been watching something on YouTube, and I wonder if he even believes that. If he just took that screenshot, he's like, this is something to tweet to have his shit on China, because I guess it's clearly never been.
It's too funny though, that one. It's just like, yeah, we all have, all the terrorists in China, they have QR codes to show that the terrorists. It doesn't make sense. Like, those are the shittiest terrorists ever then.
But the first thing you see when you get to China is how they do things a little bit differently. And I remember the first time recently that I went.
Everyone pays by QR code.
And I was like, I was like, what the fuck is this? This is awesome, No one carries around credit cards or even cash anymore.
Yeah.
How did he not know that before he posted that? Because that would just be so embarrassing.
Unless he hasn't been in the last 10 years. That's probably the only other way. He went and was like 5. Because he's like 23 and he's earning 120 grand to shill for like weapons companies. Maybe Nathan Ruza. The Ruza is actually just a whole ruse to trick us. We don't know.
Man, if you gave me that money, maybe I could be tempted as well.
I mean, when you're 23, you're making that money. It's pretty cool, I guess. But what I found really annoying was, I say, he's like, look at that knife, it's chained down. I'm like, have you been to a fucking market, mate? Utensils get chained down at every market.
Was it you that tweeted about pens being chained down at banks in Australia? No,
I didn't, but probably someone would have. That's what happens because you don't want you to steal their shit, especially a knife. Yeah. Good knifes hard to
I
get
mean,
when you're a watermelon color. They need those
especially
big ones. Yeah.
especially in like a street food market where like any kid who's picking pockets can run up and steal shit like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Say you buy a crappy knife, even at Woolworths, you get your ID checked and everything. It's
yeah.
it's quite is that bad? And there's all these, like, if you go on an Australian embassy in China, they have all these QR codes to migrate or, like, international education. So is Australia like checking out for terrorists now in the embassy, or it's the dumbest take I've ever seen, mate. It's so bad. It just seems like this kid's trying to pander or try to be woke, but he's not. Like, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. He gets so many things wrong every day. I don't know. Maybe he should just go back to looking at, like, biking lanes or whatever the hell he was doing back in the day.
So what about this? Let's put our tinfoil hats on for a second. What if Aspie is deliberately having one or two? Because I think we could possibly include Vicky Zhu in this as well.
John Garneau, who got sued by a billionaire for defamation and lost 200 grand.
No, not him. I mean, like, young, kind of maybe not naive, but easily impressionable people.
Josky.
And they are deliberately out there copying, not abuse, whatever it is that me and you do on Twitter. Or we're a bit more politer than some people. They do cop abuse.
We just point out the facts.
Yeah, but what we do, we push back constantly, whereas
the other people just like, fuck are you, a bitch? Like, fuck are you, a dolphin? Like, those Chinese nationalists.
Yeah. I mean, that's dumb as well. But I understand where they're coming from. But you notice that a lot of the more senior analysts at Aspie, they're not active on social media. They do not put themselves in a situation where they can be challenged. So, yeah, I just wonder why Aspie has this tactic of sending these young people.
Well, they can't fail. That's the thing. Because no matter how much you push back, they can just, label you as a genocide denier. It's like Donald Trump or his family. They can't fail. These people can't fail because if they fail, all their mates in the media also fail. So they can keep, like, look at John Garneau. He was working for Fairfax and he lost a 200 grand lawsuit for spreading fake news about a billionaire. How sad is that? You lose 200 grand to a billionaire, and he just fell his way into a senior analyst or something, fellowship job at Aspie, making a few hundred grand.
Yeah, right.
So you can't fail. And, John Garneau, I feel bad for him. He's probably he's the failed son of the family. His brother's way cooler. He's like this actual dude who goes to Xinjiang and, like, studies Hui Muslim culture. And his dad's...
Is that Ross Garneau or? Was that the dad?
The dad, yeah. The dad's the famous economist.
Right.
His brother is the Garneau family. I can't remember. John is the failed son. Yeah, he's the cool one. He's the fit one.
Anyway, yeah. Okay.
It's just so sad, how this has occurred. But Anthony Garneau, yeah, that's the other one. So what makes it really weird is also, like, it's all these failed sons coming in. Then you got Josky, who's the son of Stephen Josky, who's like he was the president of the Australia-China Commerce Board in Beijing, and he was also, leaders of all these other, like, economic stuff. He's a consultant apparently, and it seems like his consultancy seems to just work around allegedly attacking China and trying to cut off Chinese goods nowadays. But yeah, so basically these failed sons. Then you got Alex Turnbull, who wants to be an Aspie guy. It looks like, from all.
Oh facets. Man, yeah, he's definitely auditioning for a job at Aspie, isn't he?
He has the failed son thing going.
He's been doing all his little research. He has these most boring threads that no one cares about.
Like one like. He has 5,000 followers. He gets like 2 likes.
Yeah, but those 5,000 followers are mostly they're not there for the China content.
They're for the MBN attacks. Yeah.
Yeah, they're there. Well, because last year or the year before, like, he turned against the Liberal Party because the Liberal Party sacked his dad as Prime Minister. And so on Australian Twitter, we call them brokens, that they blindly loyal to the Labor Party and they don't really care about policy. So when, oh, let's face it, a right-wing rich kid wanker like Alex Turnbull starts saying stuff against another right-wing politician, they really embraced him. And for a while, he was like a darling of, Australian leftist, vaguely leftist Twitter.
Yeah, then he started losing it again. We started defending the NBN and how his dad basically, allegedly gave contracts to mates of copper mining to get the copper wires in and fucked over Australia for the next 100 years. But,
But no one gives a shit about his China content. Nobody wants to go to him.
It's also shit as well. It's like Orientalist. Like he was looking at, like he was getting pissed about Tibetan fungus penis peels or some shit, allegedly. I'm like, who the fuck talks about this? And it just seems like he's having a go at Carl Zar all the time. Because probably, the only people that talk about penis peels are people with really small dicks. Or that need to use the peels. It's true.
Yeah.
And there was that thread he did.
He hates Carl, yeah.
That thread he did. Oh, yeah, because me and Carl wrecked him with that CIA him reveal.
That's right.
And yeah, he I honey potted. I was like, yeah, Carl's on CIA. He just believed in it. Actually tweeted it at Bill Bishop, one of the biggest China watchers on the platform. Yeah. So he did his own thread on like sort of a summary of Chinese history. Did you see that?
Actually, no, I did. Yeah.
It was so bad. But the thing is, there's so many mistakes. It takes so long to because there's so many mistakes. It takes so long to sort of get away with them. It's kind of like the Donald Trump tactic. We just say so many lies, just get tired of trying to attack it. And he got 1 like on each post for some reason. Oh, and one of them got 6. Okay.
Well, it was probably a bunch of Falun Gong stooges who forced themselves to like his content.
The one he says they got 6 was because it's current day is all about genocide or some shit, allegedly. Because probably Falun Gong stooges. So it just seems very racist. It's like he talks about the Yuan dynasty, which is the Mongolian dynasty in Genghis Khan's time, and he says it's a great sort of state for minorities because compared to the Ming, which is such bullshit. The Yuan dynasty, even if you Wikipedia it comes up. The Yuan dynasty had a caste system of 4 levels for racial groups, with the Mongolians at the top. Then the Muslims, which is where my family came over, at the second top, ruling as the ruling sort of aristocrats. Then there was the third was the Northern Chinese, then the fourth, the Southern Han Chinese. So you had 90% of the population literally living under the yoke of the 1 or 2% of the people. How is that good for anyone, for racial tolerance? He just doesn't know shit, I guess he really hates Chinese people, maybe. So maybe that's good for him. He's like, Dad! Yeah.
But it's such a weird thing for him to tweet about, because no one would go to him for that sort of content.
And he says Chinese identity normalizes expansionary policy and ethnic cleansing. What the fuck?
Oh my god.
I don't know. That's part of my identity, mate. I never wanted to kill people like some Australians who came on the First Fleet. Cough, cough, Turnbulls. But yeah, he feels the fail son thing where he's at, even Sean Rain hit him hard. It was 5 jobs in 3 years until he got to Goldman Sachs by his dad. Yeah, I could just totally see it at home. It's just he sounds like, Alex, are you looking at Mel Flag again? It's just no, Dad. I'm trying to uncover CIA agents. He's just the most biggest loser in his family.
Yeah. I wish I was a loser in that family.
Get a few mil from your dad.
Some money's good.
Fail around. Yeah, true. I mean, he's living a life. I don't know why he's putting himself through this.
Man, I tell you what, he could do. There's so many other things he could be doing with his life right now. I don't know. It's a bit of a sad Elon Musk situation. Elon Musk.
I want my own think tank. No. The Turnbull Policy Institute. Do we call it the Toilet Paper Institute to bully him? Great.
Hate that guy.
Yeah, it'd be great though when he gets his own think tank. His dad just starts funding it. He's like, "Okay, Alex, I'll get you a think tank, but please don't
just keep him out of trouble.
Don't resign or do anything racist or anything crazy in the next few weeks."
So, the other funny one that popped up the last couple of days was that Fifield, Kiwi academic / writer. Is it Anna Fifield?
Yeah.
No
one will talk to
She
her.
had written one last article before she left China. She was complaining about how no one wanted to talk to her. That's kind of old. There's not much to really add to that. I think Western journalists have been saying that for a while. It doesn't really seem to be true anyway. They don't really want to talk to Australians or Americans, I guess.
Ever since Trump got elected, they could see how twisted the Western media was. Chinese people just don't trust Western media in general.
Yeah. And she was posting some weird photos of mosques and stuff and saying that they were closed. And then I asked her, I can't find it now. I can't remember what I asked her, but she ended up replying saying, some days she went there, it was closed, and some days she went there, it was open, but she had to sign in, which was probably just like a coronavirus thing. You pretty much have to sign in everywhere you go, anywhere in Australia. I'm sure it's the same. I don't know. The point, like, a question I wanted to ask was, this Anna Fifield apparently can't read Chinese, which I don't really have a massive problem with. It sounds like it's hard as hell to read. If you can speak it, doesn't seem too much drama. But she's also written a book about Kim Jong-un.
Yes, I saw that.
So now I'm wondering it's
a very wide specialization.
Yeah, it is. Can she read Korean? Can she speak Korean? I doubt she's been to North Korea to do any research. Where does she get all the information for the book?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. As we said, we did talk about it on a podcast that Washington Post were looking for a new bureau chief, which is probably replacing Anna Fifield. And on the job description, it's like Chinese is not necessary. Chinese skills are not necessary.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they're going into the same path. They just want some white face, some Karen to just, mend the ship. I'm guessing, I'm just going to make an assumption. I don't think she knows any Korean. She probably just got all her sources translated or just used English articles and just, posted a line like, Kim Jong-un killed 50 people with anti-aircraft guns last night or some crap,
She may have had like a research assistant to translate it for her. I mean, I guess that's fair enough, but why not just have the research assistant write the book?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the main issue with a lot of this. Like, why would you hire Bill Birtles when you have to hire like 2 translators and like personal assistants, and you have to, have 3 or 4 wages to sustain one person when you just get just one person who speaks both languages?
Yeah.
And he doesn't, running for his life. Oh, anyway, that's why Bill posted about the Chinese journalists getting their offices raided.
Houses ransacked.
Well, he sort of put some doubt on it because he was like, well, they'd use the unnamed source as his first sort of tweet, which is funny because that's what seems to be 99% of the sources in Western media about China. Of course, they've used an unnamed source because if you come out as like, anything anti-Australian, pro-China in Australian media, you're going to get killed. So basically at about 6:30 in the morning on June 26th, they knocked on the door and ASIO and police, came in, who said they had a warrant because of the anti-foreign interference law. And the journalist pointed out that according to relevant laws, they had, consular protection in the Chinese consulate, and he called the consulate, and that person and their daughter had been working in their sleep, and they sat in the sofa as they watched the ASIO and the police turn their house upside down. If they went to the toilet, there would be people waiting outside the door, making sure they don't escape to the toilet. They were really scared. His daughter was just kind of, obviously it's a child, be quite scared. All their devices were searched, including their personal computers, mobile phones, iPads, electronic devices, along all the materials. They basically just went through the whole house and ransacked it. Yeah.
That's just standard cop shit, right?
Yeah. And 3 other Chinese journalists also were suspected of search. 2 of them were women. and some of them even experienced worse, harassment than this person had. And they apparently asked for reasons. There were no reasons given afterwards because there wasn't any, interference, or there was no basis for them. And basically, the lies has been upturned since then, and they have left the country since. Yeah.
So it looks like nothing ever came out about that. There was no arrests, or the Australian media has not reported it. This is the first time an Australian journalist has really spoken about it.
Yeah, it was posted by the Chinese media. So
yeah. Well, I hate to say it, but we were one of the first people to break that yarn.
From actually Chen Hong, yeah, who talked about it. Like, you don't know about how they came in the morning and basically ransacked the house.
Yeah. So it's odd that Birtles would wait. Well, it's been 2 or 3 weeks now.
To be honest, I mean, it's good that he actually talks about it, even though he tries to kind of, black market by saying there's no source. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's definitely I don't know, muddying the water, I guess. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but
no, exactly the right term. Like,
yeah.
But it's weird how Australian media still hasn't, talked about 4 journalists getting their. Where's the, remember when the ABC got raided, which is absolutely horrible for the Afghanistan war crime investigation. That was over the news for like a week or two because all the journalists came out in solidarity, which is cool because that's a breach of freedom of press. But where are the the Australian journalists talking about this, like going, oh look, these 4 journalists were raided and there was no evidence of their foreign interference.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, they don't care about the chinks. Hey.
How a regular Australian journalist can think that it can happen to a Chinese journalist and not eventually happen to them too, or fucking anyone.
It's already happened multiple times.
Yeah. So, it's weak. I understand. I guess the media environment in Australia is pretty tough. If you did get a job at the ABC or one of the News Corp or Fairfax outlets, you probably would be willing to sell your soul just to keep that fucking job.
Yeah,
not excusing it, but
it's very cozy in a way. If you can keep it. I mean, the AFP, there have been articles. I read one. It was like they access illegal information over 5,000 times in the last year without a warrant, like looking through people's text messages and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So we don't know who's been breaching that. It's just absolutely shocking that they're always talking about Chinese government spying surveillance, but Australia's doing it and breaking the law. All he gets is like one article in the news, and people just forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not fully up on this story. I'll have to look into it. But with the East Timor, we were spying on some East Timorese in Australia because they took us. The East Timorese government took Australian government to court over a gas shelf that we share. And it turned out that Australians had been spying on them, and then I might be wrong here, but they were holding like secret interrogations and stuff as well, like just next level, all for the mining companies and oiling companies.
Yeah, it's disgusting. We're just like a miniature version of America, but really shit at it as well. Yeah, like we can't even beat up a country that we literally set up as a puppet state. We're just that trash. Like we can't do anything right. It's also like we're basically scamming Chinese people all day, selling shitty vitamins and baby formula that I wouldn't trust because I know, like, as an Australian myself, I'm lazy as fuck. If I made something, I would not buy it. I don't know. I know it sounds horrible, but it's true. We are lazy, like comparatively to. I would trust the Uyghur dude to make my shoes, not myself. I would probably make the worst shit ever. Yeah.
Yeah. No. For the purposes of keeping my job, I won't say too much. Yeah.
I'm just
in the
saying,
past, I've done some pretty.
If you get stuff
to
do, I'll do it.
I really hope that this country finds out before it's too late that we can't take the rest of the world for granted. It's been one thing for America to do it to the rest of the world because they are so powerful. But as the crisis in higher education at the moment in Australia is showing that we don't just need China, we need the whole world, and we can't be pissing people off.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna rely on America where they just had two, like, I don't know, 100-year-old dudes, yap about clowns and rap for an hour and a half. It's a very dire world we're going into at the moment. And yet Morrison's just putting all the eggs in one basket when we can easily have a huge economic boost if Morrison would just say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And he won't do that because we're America's #1 ass kissers.
Yeah, no, well, he's following orders too, I guess. So.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know what he's getting out of it, but it's dodgy as. Anyway, we'll end here today. Just a broad going over the week.
See you guys.
See ya.
英雄花间里，歌曲人影稀。谁知明日是分离，台上换真心。唱一曲别离，谁在君怀里？昨日相依，今夜又相离，各离相为敌。一出悲喜，众里佳人老矣，为戏武林英雄美人在交替，笑谈千年悲。